back to the show today. Today we are talking about NBA agents. Who are these guys? What do they do day to day? What tasks does their job actually entail? How much negotiation actually happens when signing an NBA contract? You'd assume general managers would know what they're getting into when they make an NBA player an offer. They're watching the NBA, they know their player, they probably know the monetary value of each guy. And so what service is the agent actually providing? Are they manipulating the general manager into thinking the player is better than they've actually seen? And most importantly, how do these NBA agents actually get paid? Let's start with the background of most NBA agents. Most agents have law degrees, and most states require NBA agents to have a degree in law. And of course, if you're an NBA player, you're going to want your NBA agent to understand legal jargon, being that most of the work that he does is reviewing a contract, a legal document. If you're looking into being an NBA agent, your best option is to already know a guy that's entering the NBA draft. Obviously, it's really hard to get a job at CAA or Clutch or Excel, the big sports agencies. In fact, the only way to really get your foot in the door is by recruiting your own players and bringing them into a large agency. And hopefully you find yourself in a quid pro quo situation where you receive players from them later in your career. Let's start with the NBA agent that has the most money under contract. That would be Rich Paul. Rich Paul right now has $1.9 billion under contract between 26 different players. Rich Paul got his start as LeBron's agent when LeBron and Rich Paul started Clutch Sports Group in 2012. So there are obviously two factors when it comes to signing with an agent. Obviously, a player wants his agent to be competent and knowledgeable, which of course Rich Paul was, being that he worked with Leon Rose, that's LeBron's former agent before they started Clutch Sports. Rich Paul was also involved in a lot of LeBron's other business investments. The guy was no scrub to the business world. The other aspect is trust. Players need to know that their agent is equally invested in their success. LeBron and Rich Paul have a relationship that goes back to when LeBron was 17 years old when they met at the Akron airport. LeBron has a trusted circle of friends that he made from around this time in his life. At a very early age, LeBron saw the importance of keeping a trusted circle around him. LeBron has two more trusted people beside him with Randy Mims and Maverick Carter, LeBron's childhood friends that are still with him to this day. Maverick Carter being the one that got him the Beats by Dre deal, one of the biggest endorsements of his life. This is another part of the business that agents handle, negotiating and securing brand endorsement deals. LeBron's team has played a large role in making him a billionaire. Trust is hard. I'm sure most of us have put our trust in someone in our life who has then burned us. But LeBron has been able to discern the real ones from his friends, his business partners, all the way to his wife. It pays to be able to recognize who wants us and who wants something from us. But I'm gonna be honest, some of Rich Paul's other clients have not found him so trustworthy. I think a lot of players thought having the biggest name in basketball management would be good for their career. This was not the case for Marcus Morris and Nerlens Noel. In the summer of 2019, Morris was coming off a pretty solid season with the Celtics. But the Celtics ultimately decided to let him walk because they wanted to sign Kemba Walker. Allegedly, there was a deal for Morris to go to the Clippers and sign a deal for $41 million over the course of 3 years. But Morris ended up agreeing to a deal with the Spurs for $20 million over 2 years. My guess is that Paul didn't get the deal done in time, and the Clippers ended up signing Kawhi Leonard and trading for Paul George, leaving no more money for Morris. As a consolation, he still had the Spurs deal, and he went to that. Understanding that Morris was probably really disappointed that he had to take a consolation deal, he caught wind that the Knicks were interested in him. So he reneged on the Spurs deal and went to the Knicks for $15 million in 1 year. After this, Paul and Morris parted ways. Rich Paul was probably mad that Morris reneged on the deal and his reputation looked like and Morris was probably upset that the Clippers deal fell through in the first place. I'm speculating here, but I got a feeling Rich Paul just had too many clients, and Morris's free agency was not a priority for him. But if you're wondering if Rich Paul still got his cut from the Knicks deal, he definitely did. Nerlens Noel has even worse blood with Rich Paul, because he actually ended up suing Clutch Sports. Nerlens claimed that Rich Paul cost him $58 million over the 4 years he was represented by him. Because in the summer of 2017, Rich Paul negotiated a $70 million contract for Nerlens Noel with the Dallas Mavericks. That's a lot of money. That's a really good deal. But Paul actually advised him to turn down the offer. He said, hey, sign this qualifying offer with the Mavericks and maybe next summer we can get even more money. So Noel accepted that qualifying offer for the next year for $4.1 million. This is when betting on yourself goes wrong, because Nerlens suffered a thumb injury that season and he did not get that big offer from the Mavericks the following summer. After this, Noel was signing nothing but low-level contracts. And here's where the lawsuit actually starts to make a lot of sense. If you're Rich Paul and some of your clients are making in the hundreds of millions of dollars on their contracts, that's going to be your focus if you're Rich Paul. You're not going to care about a $5 to $10 million deal with Nerlens Noel. It's just not worth your time. Rich Paul is going to focus on his 4% cut from a $220 million Anthony Davis deal. Nerlens is an afterthought. In fact, what prompted this lawsuit is the fact that Nerlens Noel learned that the Rockets and the Clippers were interested in him that summer, but they claimed they couldn't get a hold of Rich Paul. They said he wasn't picking up his phone. Dang, that sucks. But the lawsuit was ultimately thrown out by the judge. And now Noel has a new agent with a significantly smaller client list. So I say this in order for you to understand that there aren't bad agents, really. But every agent can't help but be self-serving. We'll come back to players and agents' interpersonal relationships in a bit. But I want to cover the relationship between rookies entering the draft and their agents. This is a huge gamble for agents because they're not guaranteed that their player will get an NBA contract. And the agent has to cover all of the expenses for the player. Any sort of travel expenses, hotels, flights, whatever has to be covered by the agent. Any sort of fees that require them to get in front of NBA teams is coming out of the agent's pocket. And for this reason, on a rookie contract, an NBA agent takes about 10% versus a tenured NBA player, he's only taking 4%. Just because there is so much risk and legwork involved. This is probably the most work that an NBA agent has to put in their career because the stakes are so high. You're trying to get a player that isn't in the NBA into the NBA. Getting your player into quality workouts and quality interviews is a real chore. You've also got to understand that a lot of the work the agent has to put in is literally babysitting the player and keeping them out of trouble. These are young guys. More and more though, I'm noticing that the top players in the draft are very humble and they're very responsible and they're focused on the journey that is being an NBA player. But every year we see NBA rookies getting into trouble with the law or just losing focus and having bad workouts and interviews. The former this year, Brandon Miller being involved in a murder case and Imani Bates pleading guilty to a misdemeanor weapons charge. And the latter being Cam Whitmore, who simply just didn't do well in workouts and had some really bad interviews. He fell to 20th when he was supposed to go 6th. Players dropping lower in the draft equals less money for the player and the agent. If you haven't seen the movie High Flying Bird, I really recommend it. During the movie, there's some great testimonials from Karl Anthony Towns, Reggie Jackson, Donovan Mitchell, talking about this subject. Sometimes players and agents just grow apart because of differences in opinion, like last summer when Russell Westbrook wanted to trade from the Lakers. Russ's career-long agent, Thad Foucher, thought that 4 trades in 4 years would be a kind of a bad look. And if a team did trade for him, they'd probably just buy him out and waive him, and he'd sign a vet minimum contract. So Russ and Thad just split ways. And to Foucher's credit, that's exactly what happened. The Lakers did trade him, he went to the Jazz, and they waived him. I think it's important to value people in your life that keep it real with you, even if the truth is hard to accept and it stings a little. Another facet of being an agent is interacting with the media. The media, or the story of the NBA, is incredibly important when it comes to public perception, whether that's with brand deals or NBA teams that are potentially going to sign you. Most of this involves either talking to Adrian Wojnarowski with ESPN or Shams Charania with The Athletic. These guys are the guys that are going to deliver your message. For instance, Aaron Goodwin, Damian Lillard's agent, was the one that leaked that Damian Lillard wanted to be traded from the Portland Trailblazers and that he wanted to be traded to Miami. He also delivered the message that if another team were to trade for him that wasn't Miami, they'd be trading for a very unhappy player. I know this seems childish, but it's actually a really strategic move from Goodwin because he's able to deter another team from putting together a good package for Damian Lillard. No team is going to sell the farm to receive a player that doesn't want to be there. So ultimately, an NBA agent's real responsibility is to take care of any business aspect of the player's career so that the player can solely focus on the game of basketball. All right, thank you for being here. I hope you enjoyed that video. Yeah, be good to your mothers, eat a corn dog. I think that's all I have to say.